Hey guys, tonight we drift back more than 2,000 years to a narrow neck of land called the Isthmus of Corinth, where two seas almost kiss each other and a city once ruled the crossroads of the world. It's 146 BCE, and you're standing on the marble steps of a marketplace so rich that sunlight bounces from gold jewellery, polished bronze, and the white robes of merchants haggling in half a dozen tongues. The smell of olive oil, incense and sea salt fills the air. Seabirds cry above the harbour, and somewhere down the avenue a flute player is warming up for the evening feast. You probably won't survive this night, because soon Rome is coming, and Rome doesn't forgive pride. Corinth has always been a city of appetite. Even after Alexander's empire broke apart, even after Macedon fell to Roman spears, Corinth rebuilt itself into a merchant kingdom of marble and arrogance. Its location made it untouchable. A glittering bridge between the Aegean and the Ionian Sea, where every ship bound from east to west stopped to trade, repair, or pay tribute. Its docks are crowded with grain from Egypt, perfumes from Syria, and slaves from Thrace. Its craftsmen are unmatched. The bronze of Corinthian workshops is prized from Sicily to Syria. Even Rome, proud, iron-hearted Rome, decorates its temples with Corinthian columns. You walk through the agora, the public square, and it feels like standing in the centre of the world. Philosophers argue beside perfume sellers, sailors shout from balconies, priests lead processions toward the temple of Aphrodite, whose priests and priestesses, hundreds of them, are as famous as the city's wealth. There's laughter, arrogance, the shimmer of confidence that always comes before the fall. But under the laughter, rumours are beginning to spread. Messengers from the north whisper that Roman legions have crossed from Macedonia. The consul Lucius Mummius marches south with 30,000 men. Disciplined, methodical, unstoppable. He says he's coming to restore order, but everyone knows what that means: punishment. For now, though, the people of Corinth refuse to believe. You hear them in the taverns sneering over cups of wine. Rome, one merchant laughs. They're traders like us, only hungrier. Another waves his hand dismissively. They'll take tribute and leave. They always do. It's the same mistake every empire makes, thinking that Rome negotiates. The Achaean League, that fragile federation of Greek cities, still clings to the dream of independence. Athens is quiet, Sparta is broken, but Corinth still glows with that old Hellenic arrogance. The city's strategos, Diaeus, paces before the council, his armour gleaming, his jaw set. Rome thinks us weak, he says. They forget who taught them to build, to fight, to think. The crowd roars approval. Even in decline, Greece cannot imagine bowing. You walk along the upper terrace that overlooks both seas. To the east lies the Saronic Gulf, glittering like silver. To the west, the Corinthian Gulf, a deeper blue. Between them rises the Corinth, the fortress hill crowned by temples and watchtowers. It looks eternal. It isn't. Ships glide through the harbours, unloading goods and gossip. Traders from Delos talk of new taxes. Sailors from Rhodes whisper of Roman garrisons appearing like weeds across the islands. Everywhere the same story. Rome absorbs, Rome dictates, Rome devours. And yet, in Corinth, pride runs thicker than fear. The people host games, festivals, feasts. The priests of Apollo still chant in the sanctuary. Even as the Senate in Rome debates Corinth's fate, its citizens commission new mosaics, new sculptures, new villas. You can almost feel the denial rising from the stones themselves, but the omens are turning. One morning, the temple priests report that the sacred flame at the altar of Hera has gone out, not blown by wind, but extinguished suddenly, as if smothered by invisible hands. The next night, a red glow is seen on the horizon, not dawn but the reflection of Roman campfires north of Thebes. Still, life goes on. It always does, right up until it doesn't. In the baths, the wealthy gossip about Rome's greed. They want our art, says one. Our gold, says another. A philosopher laughs. No, they want our soul, but they can't afford it. He's wrong. Rome can afford anything. Down by the docks, soldiers of the League drill in ragged formations. Some are veterans, most are farmers or craftsmen with spears older than their fathers. They look up at the Corinth and tell each other it's invincible. No one mentions that invincible cities always fall the loudest. As night falls, the city glows with oil lamps and laughter. A poet recites verses in honor of freedom. The crowd applauds. Somewhere on the road to the north, a Roman scout watches the flicker of those same lamps and marks their number. When dawn comes again, the gulls circle above a city unaware that history is already writing its last entry. The wind smells faintly of salt, bronze, and fire. For now, Corinth still stands, proud, glittering, and doomed. The sun rises slow over the Peloponnese, spilling light across mountains that have seen too many armies march their slopes. Greece, in 146 BCE, is not the land of the heroes anymore. Not the Greece of Achilles or Leonidas, not the shining stage of Pericles or Alexander. It's a mosaic of proud little cities, each dreaming it's still the centre of the world while Roman boots thunder closer every year. You can smell the dust of old glory in the air. It mixes with the scent of olive groves, dry earth, and something faintly metallic. The promise of war. You're standing on a ridge near the isthmus, looking down at the thin strip of land that ties mainland Greece to the south. It's narrow, barely 6 kilometres wide, but it holds the fate of 2 worlds. To the north, Roman banners advance from Macedonia, where the last kings have already fallen. To the south, the cities of the Achaean League muster their militias, banners fluttering weakly in the dry wind. And in the middle, glittering like a coin between 2 clenched fists, lies Corinth. The League once meant something noble, a federation of free Greek cities standing together, bound by mutual defence and shared law. But freedom is expensive, and Rome now holds the purse. The Senate claims to protect Greece's independence, but its protection looks suspiciously like occupation. Roman legions garrison in Ambracia and Delphi, their commanders lecturing Greek magistrates on how to behave like civilized men. Every treaty Rome signs feels like a leash. Every promise of peace feels like a threat wrapped in silk. After the Third Macedonian War, Rome claimed victory over King Perseus and declared liberation for Greece. The word sounds beautiful in Latin, libertas, but the Greeks have learned what it really means: tribute, oversight, and humiliation disguised as law. The Macedonian treasury is gone, the army's dissolved, and even proud Sparta sends envoys to Rome begging for favour. Only Corinth still pretends the old world can survive. Its merchants mutter that Rome is just another empire that will fade, like Persia before it. Its philosophers debate whether true freedom is possible under law. Its artisans keep carving statues of gods who no longer answer prayers. In the shadow of the Acrocorinth, pride still burns, the kind that blinds before it destroys. Meanwhile, Rome is changing too. The Senate no longer sees Greece as a partner in civilization, but as an unruly client. To them, the Greeks are troublesome debtors, clever with words, stingy with taxes, and annoyingly proud of a past no one asked to hear about. They lecture us on philosophy, one senator sneers, while we lecture them on survival. Tension snaps in the spring of that year. The Achaean League, led by the fiery general Diaeus, refuses to obey Roman orders to dissolve. The Senate had demanded the League release certain cities, Sparta, Argos and others, claiming they were friends of Rome. But Greece sees the demand for what it is: dismemberment. The League votes to resist. The message goes out to every city: stand or kneel forever. At first, the defiance feels like glory reborn. The councils meet beneath torchlight. Men swear oaths before the gods, and Corinth's harbour buzzes with soldiers arriving from across the Peloponnese. But behind the speeches and ceremonies lies quiet despair. Everyone knows Rome's patience is shorter than its sword. In Delphi, the oracle is consulted, because of course she is, and the priestess, shrouded in fumes, murmurs, "Beware the west wind, it carries iron." The envoys from Corinth laugh it off. They've always believed the gods favour courage. The Romans, though, have learned that the gods favour logistics. In the Senate, the debate is brief. The consul Lucius Mummius receives his orders: march south, break the League, burn Corinth if necessary. The senators nod, weary, pragmatic. To them, this isn't conquest, it's maintenance. You can almost hear their sighs. Another province to pacify, another city that forgot who's in charge. The march begins. Roman standards rise over Epirus, over Boeotia, down through Megara, red banners rippling like warning flares. The legions move with terrifying precision. Engineers ahead, scouts fanning wide, supply trains creaking behind. Villagers along the road offer tribute without being asked. Priests kneel, children stare, old men curse quietly into their hands. Everyone knows what happens to cities that make Rome angry. Word reaches Corinth in waves of panic. Some call for surrender, others for resistance. The council debates for days, voices echoing in marble halls that smell of sweat and fear. The general Dias slams his fist on the table. If we yield now, he says, we prove them right, that Greece has forgotten how to fight. The assembly cheers, but the sound is hollow. They're cheering not for victory, but for dignity, the only thing left to lose. By summer, Roman scouts appear on the northern hills. The dust of their march drifts over the isthmus like a storm front. From the Corinth, you can see the glint of their helmets, tiny sparks of sunlight, countless and cold. And in the city below, the markets grow quiet. Ships are drawn up on shore. The temples close their doors. The laughter fades. Corinth, the queen of trade, feels the shadow of empire fall across her like an eclipse. Rome doesn't hate Greece. It simply doesn't need her anymore. Philosophy and art are nice, but obedience is nicer. As night falls, you stand by the harbour, watching the torchlights flicker across the black water. Somewhere out there, a Roman warship's sail catches the moonlight. The wind smells faintly of iron, the west wind, the one the oracle warned about. The streets of Corinth hum with the kind of tension that feels like a held breath. You can sense it in the way the guards grip their spears, in the way merchants glance north every time a gust of wind carries dust from the isthmus. The city, for all its marble and music, has become a fortress. Banners of the Achaean League hang from the ramparts, snapping in the wind, blue and white, marked with the old symbols of freedom. Once they stood for unity among Greek cities. Now they look more like stubborn ghosts of a world that no longer exists. You wander through the agora, and the sound of debate is everywhere. Philosophers, soldiers, merchants, everyone has an opinion. The Romans won't dare destroy us, one man insists. We are Greece, another spits on the ground. Greece died with Alexander, he mutters. We're just bones waiting for the fire. In the council hall, torches flicker over stone walls lined with the shields of old heroes. The air is thick with sweat and incense. At the head of the assembly stands Dias, the league's commander, tall, severe, his voice hoarse from sleepless nights. Around him, envoys from Megalopolis, Argos and Sparta argue over maps that show fewer and fewer options. Rome demands dissolution, one envoy says. If we yield now, they will spare Corinth. Dias slams his fist on the table so hard the oil lamps flicker. Spare us, he snarls. They call it mercy when they steal with both hands. They took Macedon's crown, Epirus's gold, and Athens' voice. And now they come for our pride. A murmur ripples through the chamber. Everyone knows he's right, but knowing doesn't make it less terrifying. He continues, pacing before the council. Yes, their legions are stronger. Yes, their numbers greater. But we fight for more than walls and silver. We fight for what they can't understand, for the soul of Hellas. It's a beautiful speech. Every man in the room feels the old fire stir, the echo of Thermopylae, of Salamis, of Marathon. For a moment, even the shadows seem to lean forward to listen. Then the practical voices return, older, quieter, more afraid. Dias, says the elder of Argos, the gods have already chosen. You would make Corinth another Carthage. The name falls like a hammer. Carthage, the city Rome burned to the ground only months before, scattering salt on its ashes. Everyone in Greece has heard the stories. 3 years of siege, then slaughter. Corinth's fate is beginning to look like an encore. Dias stares at the old man for a long time. If we must be Carthage, he says finally, then let it be said that we fell as Carthaginians should have, with swords in hand, not treaties in mouth. That ends the debate. The assembly votes. The league will fight. That night, torches flicker on the Corinth as messengers gallop out through the gates, carrying the order to muster. Bells toll from the temples, blacksmiths hammer through the night, reforging rusted armour, patching old helmets, women sew banners, boys fill quivers. Priests chant prayers to Ares and Athena, though even they sound uncertain whether the gods are listening. In the harbour, ships are drawn up and fitted for war. The city's merchants donate what they can: gold, timber, horses. Even slaves are promised freedom if they bear arms. The city becomes a forge, and somewhere deep inside you can feel the pulse of something old, the same defiant energy that drove Greek hoplites to charge Persian lines centuries before. It doesn't matter that the enemy now speaks Latin instead of Old Persian. Arrogance and empire always sound the same. At dawn, Daius inspects the troops. The sun rises behind the Corinth, bathing the city in gold. The soldiers, most of them farmers and artisans, stand in uneven rows, their helmets mismatched, their shields dented. Some hold spears, others, tools turned into weapons. They look terrified. They look magnificent. Daius rides before them on a grey horse. "Men of Hellas," he shouts, "look around you, these stones, these temples, this sea. This is our inheritance. Rome thinks it can buy it, burn it, bury it. But the gods gave it to us, and only they may take it back." A cheer rises, wild, desperate, beautiful. In that moment, Corinth remembers what it means to be Greek. But memory doesn't win wars. North of the city, the Roman legions are already assembling under Lucius Mummius. 2 full legions, veterans of Spain and Macedonia, march with a precision that looks almost mechanical. They sing no songs, wear no garlands, pray to no gods. Rome has learned to replace faith with discipline. Mummius, calm and deliberate, writes to the Senate that the Greeks prepare resistance, and the Senate writes back a single phrase: "Fac ut periant." See that they perish. By the end of the month, the League's hopes begin to unravel. The smaller cities falter. Sparta submits. Thebes surrenders. Only Corinth holds out. Walls strong, heart stubborn. Daius knows what's coming. He looks up at the Corinth, its temples glinting in the sunlight, and whispers, "If we fall, let it be where everyone can see." From the north, the dust clouds rise again, the first sign of Rome's advance. The west wind blows hard, carrying the faint metallic scent of iron and smoke. You stand in the square as the war horns sound. Women weep, children hide, the soldiers take their posts. The Achaean League has chosen defiance, and Rome is already on the road. The air in Corinth grows sharp with rumour long before the first Roman rider appears. Merchants who trade in Macedon bring whispers before they bring goods. That the Senate has sent envoys, that the consul Lucius Mummius demands the League dissolve, that disobedience will mean extinction. The word envoys should sound like peace. It doesn't. In Greece, it has begun to sound like judgment. You stand in the agora, where the council has gathered beneath the colonnade. The marble floor is streaked with sunlight, the air smells of dust, sweat, and the tension of men pretending they still rule themselves. Around the edges, the crowd presses close. Craftsmen, sailors, and students craning for a glimpse of the delegation from Rome. They arrive in silence. 3 men in crimson-edged togas, escorted by a handful of soldiers who wear the calm of predators. Their leader, Lucius Aurelius Orestes, carries a scroll sealed with the mark of the Senate. He reads in slow, careful Greek, his accent grinding every syllable like a whetstone. The Senate of the Roman people, protector of liberty, guardian of law, commands that the Achaean League shall release all cities under its domination. Henceforth, no Greek shall make war or levy tribute without Roman consent. He lowers the scroll and waits. No one moves. At last, Daius, commander of the League, steps forward. His armour gleams under the sun, his face calm in the way only fury can make it. "You speak of liberty," he says, "yet you carry chains. You claim to protect Greece, yet you come armed." Orestes smiles faintly. "Rome does not need to come armed to Greece," he says. "It comes armed because Greece forgets its friends." A murmur runs through the crowd. Disbelief, anger, humiliation. Orestes continues, voice cold, "Submit willingly, and Rome will be generous. Persist in rebellion, and Rome will do what must be done." Dias's jaw tightens. "We will answer in council," he says. The Romans bow slightly, the kind of bow that isn't a bow at all, and turn to leave. But before they can mount their horses, a young orator, drunk on courage or wine, shouts from the crowd, "Tell your masters that Corinth kneels to no one." The agora freezes. Orestes turns, his expression unreadable. A stone arcs from the crowd and strikes one of the Roman guards on the shoulder. The man staggers but does not retaliate. His restraint is worse than violence, it makes the insult official. More stones fly, more shouts. "Go back to your wolf city! Thieves of Greece! Murderers of Carthage!" The Roman delegation retreats under a hail of curses, their faces set in that terrifying Roman calm, the kind that means someone, somewhere, has just written your name on a list. Dias doesn't order the attack, but he doesn't stop it either. When it's over, he stands in the empty agora staring at the blood smeared on the marble. He knows what it means. Everyone does. That night, the torches burn late in the council hall. The elders beg him to send apologies. The merchants offer to pay tribute. Even the priests advise submission. Better humiliation than ruin. But Dias refuses. "If we kneel now," he says, "our sons will grow up Roman. Better they grow up free and die Greek." The next morning, a lone rider leaves Corinth heading north. He carries a sealed letter for Mummius. No one knows what it says, but when he reaches the Roman camp outside Megara, the consul listens, nods once, and gives a single order. "Advance." Word spreads faster than the legions march. Villages bar their gates, then open them again when they realize resistance means death. The Roman army moves south like an iron tide, crushing every outpost of the League in its path. By the time they reach Sicyon, the city just north of the isthmus, its people have already surrendered. Mummius orders them spared. He's not interested in towns. He wants the symbol, the one that called itself the heart of Greece. Corinth. Inside its walls, the council receives the news in silence. Someone whispers, "They're coming." No one answers. Outside, farmers abandon their fields. Families pack carts with what they can carry. The city that once mocked Rome now trembles under its shadow. And in the palace, Dias sharpens his sword by candlelight. "Let them come," he murmurs. "We will greet them as Greeks should." The flame flickers. The west wind rises. And from the hills beyond Sicyon, the red banners of Rome begin to move. The road to Corinth trembles beneath the iron rhythm of Rome. The legions move like a single creature. Tens of thousands of boots striking dust in perfect time, shields flashing in the pale spring sun. Every mile south, villages fall silent before their passing. Doors slam, smoke rises from abandoned fields. The people of the Peloponnese have learned what happens to cities that delay obedience. At the head of this slow, unstoppable tide rides Lucius Mummius, the Roman consul for the year 146 BCE. He is not a man of words or philosophy. He is a builder, a soldier, a bureaucrat of conquest. He doesn't shout, doesn't boast, doesn't even curse. His discipline is terrifying because it is absolute. Mummius does not hate Corinth. He simply intends to erase it. The legions marching with him are veterans of Spain and Macedon, men who've seen every trick of siege and slaughter. They march in order, engineers first, then scouts, then the heavy infantry with their red plumes and the glint of polished armour. Behind them creak the ballistae and onasias, siege engines that hurl stones big enough to shatter towers. Following still are the supply trains, carts of grain, water, oil, and the black tar that Rome uses to burn cities clean. The army stretches for miles, a road of men and steel. Mummius rides among them with a small escort, face calm beneath his iron helmet. To his side rides his legate, a hard-eyed officer named Scipio Nasica, who fought under the family that once destroyed Carthage. "The Greeks believe we will negotiate," Nasica says quietly. Mummius answers without looking at him. So did Carthage. The consul carries a letter from the Senate sealed in red wax. The words are brief, almost bored. The Achaean League has rebelled. Let Greece be pacified. No rhetoric, no poetry, just another administrative decision. It's one of the most chilling things about Rome. It conquers not in rage, but in paperwork. As the army moves south, Roman scouts report that the League's forces are gathering near the Isthmus of Corinth, led by the general Dias. Their numbers are inflated by slaves, farmers and volunteers, brave but disorganized. A mob, Nasica calls them. They'll break at first contact. Maybe, Mummius says, but mobs can still die loud enough to make trouble. He orders his engineers to survey the isthmus, a narrow corridor of rock and dust flanked by sea on both sides. A perfect choke point. He knows that if Corinth wants to resist, this is where they'll try to stop him. The legions advance methodically, laying out camps every night in perfect squares, ditches dug, palisades raised. The Romans never sleep without a wall. When they reach Megara, Mummius halts to address the troops. He speaks little but clearly. We march not for greed, but for order. Corinth has defied the law. The gods favour discipline. The soldiers respond with the muted clang of swords against shields, the Roman way of applause. From the walls of Corinth, smoke from the Roman camp is visible now, rising on the northern horizon like a dark cloud. The people whisper that it looks like the shadow of a hand closing over the land. In the council hall, Dias meets with his officers. His eyes are sunken from sleeplessness. They think we'll hide behind the walls, he says. We won't. We'll meet them on the isthmus. Let them see that Greeks still fight in the open. Some of his commanders cheer, but others exchange wary glances. Fighting Rome in the open field is suicide, but pride has its own logic. So they gather the League's army, 15,000 men, most of them untrained, many barely armed. They march out of the city to the isthmus, dragging carts of stones to build makeshift walls, trenching the narrow road that connects the seas. Farmers leave their ploughs behind to carry spears. Boys too young to shave wear helmets too big for their heads. It's courage wrapped in desperation. By the time Mummius's legions reach the northern edge of the isthmus, the Greeks have fortified it with earthworks, ditches and barricades. Torches flicker along the ridge. From the Roman camp, the lights of Corinth gleam faintly beyond, the city that has mocked Rome for a generation. Mummius studies the field from horseback. Impressive, Nasica admits. For amateurs, Mummius nods. Then we'll treat them as professionals. It's the only honour we can give that night. The consul walks alone through his camp. The men sit by their fires polishing armour, murmuring about what they'll do when they reach the city. Some are veterans of Carthage. They know what happens next. Mummius pauses by a fire and picks up a coin. Greek, stamped with the image of Aphrodite. Beautiful work, he says softly. Then he tosses it into the dirt. Beauty fades. At dawn, the horns sound. The Roman lines form, red shields flashing in the morning light. Across the field, the Greek banners rise, blue against the sky, fluttering above 1,000 hearts that still believe courage can stop inevitability. For a moment, there's quiet. The two armies stare at each other across the dusty plain where the sea wind blows. Then Mummius lowers his arm. The legions move forward. The wrath of Rome has begun its march. The morning begins with a scream of horns. A red dawn rises over the narrow isthmus, spilling light over two seas, the Saronic Gulf to the east, the Corinthian Gulf to the west. Between them, the armies of Greece and Rome stand face to face across a corridor of dust and stone, barely wide enough for a single city's pride. You can feel the tension ripple through the Greek lines. Farmers grip their spears tighter, merchants whisper prayers to Athena, and freed slaves mutter promises to the gods who have stopped listening. Their armour is mismatched. Some wear bronze breastplates, others padded linen. Some carry polished shields with fading emblems of heroes long dead, others just planks hammered together overnight. The smell of fear clings to the air, sweat, oil, and the dry dust kicked up by restless feet. At their centre stands Dias, commander of the Achaean League. His face is drawn, eyes red from sleepless nights, his voice rough from shouting orders. Behind him rises the distant outline of Corinth, its temples still glimmering faintly in the dawn light. the city he swore to protect, the one he knows he might never see again. Across the plain, the Roman lines are already formed. They move with quiet precision, a living wall of shields and discipline. Red crests sway like waves in the morning wind. Lucius Mummius, the consul, watches from horseback, one hand resting casually on his sword, his expression unreadable. He looks like a man taking inventory, not waging war. The Greeks strike first. Diaeus knows he must. Hesitation means annihilation. He signals his cavalry to charge the Roman flanks, hoping to break their line before the legions can close ranks. For a heartbeat, the field fills with the thunder of hooves, dust rising in a golden haze. The Greek riders crash into the Roman wings, lances gleaming in the sunlight. For a brief, impossible moment, it looks like courage might work. Then the Roman counterstroke lands, trumpets blare, and the triarii, veterans of a dozen wars, step forward in perfect formation. Their spears lower, the Greek cavalry shatters against them like water on rock. Horses scream, men fall, and the neat lines of Corinthian valour dissolve into chaos. From the centre, Roman infantry surge forward, shields interlocking, swords stabbing in rhythmic unison. The famous Roman discipline, cold, methodical, merciless, rolls over the Greek front like a tide. Diaeus rides along the line, shouting for his men to hold. "For Hellas," he cries, his voice raw. "For Corinth." The words sound noble, but the soldiers are already breaking. You can see it in their eyes, that hollow disbelief that courage alone is not enough. The battle lasts less than an hour. When the dust settles, the field is a carpet of bodies, broken shields, shattered spears, horses tangled in armour. The Roman formation barely ripples. They advance step by step, pushing what remains of the Greek army back toward the city. A handful of Achaean soldiers flee south, throwing down weapons as they run. Some reach the gates of Corinth, gasping warnings that sound more like apologies. Mummius surveys the field in silence. He dismounts, kneels briefly beside a fallen Greek officer, and studies the man's armour, dented but beautifully engraved with the face of Athena. "They still believe beauty can protect them," he says quietly. Then, to his officers, "Send word to the Senate. The League is broken. Prepare for the siege behind him," his soldiers cheer. The sound rolls down the isthmus like thunder. Rome has won again, but Mummius doesn't smile. Victories are easy. The aftermath is the real work. Back in Corinth, panic spreads faster than fire. Bells toll from the temples. Women gather their children and run for the Corinth fortress. Priests light incense before the statues of gods who have watched this all before. The council meets in chaos. Some call for surrender, others scream for revenge. Diaeus returns, covered in blood and dust, his armour cracked. His officers stare at him in silence. "They're coming," he says simply. A young soldier, barely 20, asks, "What do we do?" Diaeus looks toward the city walls. "We close the gates. We fight until the stones fall, and so begins the siege." Outside the walls, Mummius encircles Corinth like a spider spinning its web. His engineers survey the terrain, marking where to raise siege towers and where to cut off escape. Camps are built in precise rows, trenches are dug, the harbour is blockaded by Roman ships. Every move is deliberate. Rome does not rush. Inside, the people prepare for the inevitable. The blacksmiths melt statues for weapons. The temple servants tear down silk banners to make bandages. Children fetch water from the wells that will soon run dry. The Corinth fills with refugees, thousands crammed into the citadel, praying the fortress will hold. At night, you can see the two worlds staring at each other across the plain. Roman fires burning in neat lines, Corinthian torches flickering on the walls. Between them lies silence, broken only by the crackle of embers and the distant cry of wolves. Diaeus walks the ramparts alone, staring north. The wind carries the faint smell of iron. Below him, a mother hums to her child to drown out the hammering from the forges. The sound is rhythmic, desperate, the heartbeat of a doomed city still pretending it can survive. In the Roman camp, Mummius finishes dictating his orders to his scribe. No negotiations, he says. The city mocked the Senate. It will stand as a warning, he pauses, then adds, but spare the art. Rome values beauty, even in ruin. The scribe nods. The consul looks toward the walls glowing faintly under the stars. They had their chance. The wind shifts. The smell of smoke drifts south. The siege of Corinth has begun. By the first days of summer, the sound of hammers never stops. From dawn until long after dark, the Roman engineers work, driving stakes, raising mounds, building towers taller than Corinth's walls. You can hear the steady rhythm echo across the plain. Wood cracking, iron clanging, orders shouted in Latin. To the Romans, this is not passion, it's procedure. The siege is a construction project, not a war. From the Corinth, you can see the scale of it. The Roman camps stretch across the land in perfect squares, their trenches glittering in the sunlight, their tents aligned as if drawn by compass. Each morning, a trumpet sounds, and the work resumes. Siege engines roll forward inch by inch, onagers, ballistae, and rams, their bronze fittings gleaming in the haze. Behind them, the legions drill endlessly, red plumes swaying as if the entire army breathes in unison. Inside the city, the mood changes from fear to grim resolve. The gates are sealed, markets are emptied. The people strip the temples of their gold and melt it into coins to pay mercenaries who will never arrive. Every well is rationed, every loaf of bread is counted. The once proud marble streets of Corinth echo now with the cries of the hungry and the coughing of the sick. You pass through the agora, and it looks like a ghost of itself. Stalls stand empty, statues of gods are covered in soot. A few merchants still try to sell olives or salted fish, but money no longer means anything. The real currency is food and hope, which is running out faster than both. At night, the city glows red from torches along the walls. Men keep watch with bows and oil pots. The women carry stones to the battlements, ready to hurl them down when the assault begins. Somewhere someone plays a lyre, a thin, trembling sound that gets lost in the moaning of the wind. Dias moves among the people like a ghost. His armour hangs loose on his frame now. His eyes are hollow, but his voice, when he speaks, is still thunder. Corinth has stood 1,000 years, he tells his soldiers. We will not let it end in silence. In the Roman camp, Mummius prepares differently. He doesn't bluster or threaten. He calculates. His staff maps the city from every angle. He orders his engineers to dig parallel trenches, one to approach the wall, another to shield the soldiers from arrows. He sets the artillery in rows behind them. The plan is simple. Choke the city, break its walls, and let the survivors tell the story. By midweek, the siege lines close completely. No one enters or leaves. The Tenea Road, Corinth's last supply route, is cut by Roman cavalry. The harbour is sealed by galleys whose oars dip silently into the dark water. Inside, people begin to whisper that even the gods have abandoned them. Then the bombardment starts. The first stone slams into the wall at dawn, shaking the ground beneath your feet. Dust rains down from rooftops. Birds scatter. The next follows seconds later, a rhythm of destruction that doesn't stop all day. The walls hold, but each strike leaves a new scar, a new crack spidering through marble that once seemed eternal. Children cry in the streets. Mothers drag them into cellars. The temples shudder as if even the gods are trembling. From the battlements, archers loose arrows that fall harmlessly into the Roman ranks. The legions respond with javelins and firepots, their shouts rising like a chant. By nightfall, the city is a furnace of smoke and fear, and yet, somehow, life goes on. In the quarters near the harbour, families share their last bread. In the Corinth, priests light new torches beside altars buried in ash. A sculptor chips at a half-finished statue of Athena, his hands shaking but steady enough to carve. He mutters to himself, "If they burn us, let them burn beauty too." On the third day, the Romans test the walls. Their battering rams roll forward under wooden shelters, wheels grinding through the mud. Greek defenders pour boiling oil and pitch, the air filling with the smell of burning flesh and iron. The rams pull back, only to surge again. You can hear the rhythm. Thud, crack, thud. like a giant heartbeat counting down to the end. That night, Mummius walks the perimeter of his camp. His officers expect triumph, but he feels none. "They fight like lions," he says softly. "It's a pity their courage serves arrogance instead of order." The next morning, the Romans build new towers, taller, stronger, covered in fresh hides to resist flame. From the city walls, the defenders stare in horror as these monsters roll closer, looming over the battlements like iron mountains. Inside, Daius prays alone. The torchlight flickers across his face as he kneels before a broken statue of Athena Promachos, the warrior goddess. "If the gods still care," he whispers, "give us one day of glory before the end." When he rises, the wind carries the smell of smoke, not from the city, but from the Roman camp. They're preparing the pitch for fire arrows. The siege towers will move at dawn. As the night deepens, you can hear the Romans singing, a low rhythmic chant that drifts across the plain like the breathing of a beast. In the silence between verses, you can hear another sound too, the soft sob of Corinth itself, the slow collapse of 1,000 dreams into the dust. Tomorrow, the assault begins. The sky's barely grey when the horns sound, a deep rolling note that seems to shake the very stones of the city. You wake to the smell of smoke and the clang of armour, to voices shouting from the battlements, "They're moving! The towers are moving!" From the Corinth you can see it, the plain below crawling with motion, a machine of war coming alive. The Roman siege towers, black with tar and draped in wet hides, creak forward on massive wheels. Each one carries dozens of soldiers and an artillery platform at its top, where engineers adjust counterweights and ropes in silence. Between them rumble the rams, long wooden beasts capped with bronze heads shaped like wolves. Behind them, the legions march, red shields gleaming, faces blank, eyes fixed on the walls ahead. The wind carries their chant, Roma Invicta, Rome unconquered. Inside the city, chaos. Bells ring, gongs crash. The priests run through the streets sprinkling holy water that smells faintly of smoke. Soldiers climb the walls, mothers drag children toward the citadel. The air tastes of fear and iron. Daius stands on the ramparts, cloaks snapping in the wind. "Archers!" he roars. "Loose!" 1,000 arrows streak through the dawn, blackening the air. They clatter uselessly against the tower's hide coverings, a few catching fire before being smothered. The towers keep moving, slow but unstoppable. From their upper decks, Roman ballistae answer with a rain of iron bolts. You hear the wet thud as they strike flesh, the shatter of stone, the screams that follow. One of the towers reaches the outer wall. The ramp drops. A wedge of legionaries surges forward, shields up, blades ready. Greek defenders meet them with spears and stones, shouting ancient war cries, for Hellas, for Corinth. The first clash is thunder. Shields slam, swords scrape, men curse and fall. Blood runs down the stones, turning dust into dark mud. You can smell it now, hot, metallic, mingling with the acrid pitch of burning oil. The defenders fight like demons. A pot of fire bursts across the tower's ramp, and for a heartbeat, flames engulf the Roman vanguard. Men scream, stumble back. The tower shudders but holds. Arrows whistle from its windows, cutting down the men who cheered too soon. Mummius watches from a small rise beyond the field, face calm, arms crossed. Around him, aides shout reports, but he barely listens. His eyes are fixed on the city's gate, still closed, still defiant. "Signal the second line," he says at last. A trumpet answers. The battering rams roll forward again, striking in rhythm. The walls shake. Cracks widen, dust spills down like rain. You can hear each impact through your chest, a heartbeat that belongs not to you but to the dying city. Inside, panic ripples through the streets. Houses near the walls collapse under the shock. People scream prayers to Poseidon, Athena, even Zeus. But the gods remain silent. The only divine sound is the grinding of iron against stone. By midday, the north gate buckles. The wood splinters inward, a single hinge holding. Daius orders the reserves forward, farmers, boys, old men, anyone who can hold a weapon. They rush into the breach just as it gives way. The Romans pour in like a flood. The streets of Corinth become a maze of slaughter. Arrows hiss down from rooftops. Javelins flash in the narrow alleys. Every corner becomes a killing ground. Greek soldiers drag overturned carts into barricades, stabbing through the gaps. Women throw tiles from balconies. A priest runs with a torch, setting stores of oil aflame to slow the advance. The city burns and the smoke turns the sun to bronze. Dias rides through the chaos shouting for his men to regroup. His horse slips on blood-slick stones. He dismounts and fights on foot, sword flashing. Every breath he takes tastes of ash. "Hold the agora," he yells. "Hold!" But the order means nothing now. The Romans are everywhere, disciplined, relentless, faceless. Their centurions bark commands, their soldiers advance by the book, cutting through resistance as if pruning vines. By the time the sun reaches its height, the inner walls are breached. Flames climb the marble facades of the temples. Statues of the gods crack in the heat. You see one, a marble Aphrodite half melted, her face running like wax, and realize that even beauty can burn. On the high terrace near the Temple of Apollo, Dias gathers what's left of his guard. "This city was the pride of Greece," he says quietly. "Let it die with dignity." He drives his sword into the ground, kneels beside it, and whispers a prayer. Then he turns to face the advancing Romans. The final stand lasts minutes. When the smoke clears, the consul Lucius Mummius enters the city through the shattered north gate. He rides past piles of bodies and smouldering houses, his face expressionless. The air is thick with ash and the sweet, sick smell of burnt oil. His officers await his command. He gives none. He only says, "Let the men rest." Behind him, the soldiers fan out, searching every street, every house. There will be no resistance left by nightfall. From the Acra Corinth, the last defenders see the red standards of Rome rise over the city walls, the wolf of the Republic snapping at the wind. Corinth has fallen, and the real destruction is only about to begin. The first sound after the battle is silence, the kind that feels heavier than any roar. Corinth is broken, the walls breached, the gates splintered, the proud marble streets drowned in ash. The air is thick with the stench of smoke and blood. The sky itself glows red, as if the gods set the horizon aflame in shame. You can still hear the crackle of fire chewing through rooftops, the distant collapse of another column, the muted sob of a city realizing it no longer exists. Then, like the slow turning of a key, the silence gives way to the sound that always follows victory. The chaos of plunder. Roman soldiers move through the streets like a tide unchained. The discipline that carried them to triumph dissolves in an instant. Orders vanish, restraint burns away. What remains is the raw pulse of conquest. You hear it everywhere. Doors kicked in, screams rising, the clatter of bronze and pottery hitting stone. The sack of Corinth has begun. The first to fall are the temples. Soldiers break through the golden doors of Aphrodite's sanctuary, their torches throwing grotesque shadows over the walls. The sacred veil is torn down, the altars overturned. One soldier lifts a statue's head from the floor, the marble face still perfect even as cracks split her neck. "Take it," another says. "The consul will want trophies." Across the city, every shrine meets the same fate. The temples of Apollo, Poseidon, and Athena glow in the night like bonfires on the hills. Priests who refuse to flee are cut down beside their gods. Statues are smashed not from hatred, but from curiosity. The Romans want to see what they're made of. "Bronze," one laughs. "Good Roman bronze now." The marketplace becomes a slaughterhouse. Families who try to hide among the stalls are dragged into the open. Some beg for mercy in Latin, others in Greek. The Romans answer in coin and steel. One soldier, drunk on victory and stolen wine, stumbles through the stalls wearing a merchant's purple robe, shouting, "Behold! A Roman Corinthian!" The others cheer and roar with laughter. Loot piles grow in the streets. Jars of oil, bolts of silk, amphorae of wine, silver cups, gold leaf torn from temple doors. Soldiers fight each other for spoils. By noon, the gutters run not just with blood but with melted gold, and still the fires spread. The consul Lucius Mummius rides through the chaos, face hard as granite. His officers plead for order, but the city has become a storm that no man commands. They're burning the art, one tribune warns. Priceless works, Praxiteles, Lysippus. Mummius stops, turns his horse, and says quietly, "Then they should burn carefully." He gives one order: every man, woman and child found alive is to be taken prisoner. "They mocked Rome," he says. "Let them now feed her." The soldiers obey, eventually. The killing slows, replaced by the herding of survivors. Chains clatter, ropes tighten. The streets fill with columns of captives, some silent, some wailing, all bound for slavery. Women clutch their children. Old men stare blankly at the smoke-streaked sky. The rich are bound first, their jewels stripped and catalogued. The poor are driven in groups, their names never written down. A few soldiers, veterans of Carthage, murmur that this looks familiar. Same fires, same screams, same smell. They call it the scent of empire. By sunset, the whole city glows like a furnace. The flames reach so high that sailors in Aegina, 50 miles away, can see the reflection on the sea. Corinth's twin harbours, Lyceum and Century, are filled with burning ships. The heat twists the air, marble cracks and pops like timber. Somewhere in the chaos, a sculptor hides beneath his workshop, clutching a half-finished statue. It's a figure of Nike, the goddess of victory, wings half-carved. The sculptor whispers, "Maybe she'll fly away from this." The roof collapses before he finishes the thought. By nightfall, even the conquerors are exhausted. The streets are unrecognisable, heaps of rubble, bones and molten bronze where temples once stood. The air is thick with ash that settles on everything, soft as snow. In the eerie glow, the city looks almost peaceful again, as if it's finally stopped resisting. Mummius stands before the smouldering remains of the agora. His officers approach, waiting for orders. "Leave it burning until morning," he says, "then strip it bare." One asks quietly, "And the people?" He doesn't answer. The next morning, what's left of Corinth wakes under a pale, choking dawn. Smoke curls from every ruin. Crows gather on the walls, pecking at what remains. The survivors are rounded up in the square, thousands of them silent and hollow-eyed. A Roman officer reads their fate from a scroll. The words are simple. All property of Corinth now belongs to the Senate and people of Rome. The crowd doesn't react. They just stare, stunned beyond grief. Mummius turns away, mounting his horse. Behind him, a legionary hoists a blackened Corinthian helmet on a spear. The plume is gone, the metal scorched, a crown for a corpse. As the consul rides north, the city behind him collapses into embers. Corinth, jewel of Greece, mistress of two seas, teacher of art, lover of beauty, is gone. Rome has burned her name into memory the only way it knows how, with fire. By dawn, the fires of Corinth have become their own weather. The city doesn't just burn, it breathes flame. Wind rushes through shattered streets, feeding the inferno, drawing smoke upward in spirals that vanish into the white sky. The sound is like the ocean, waves of crackling, collapsing roofs, and the steady roar of heat consuming marble, wood, and memory. From the Acra Corinth, the fortress hill that once guarded the city, you can see the devastation stretched to the horizon. The temples are gone. The porticos of the agora are black skeletons. The harbours at Lyceum and Century are sheets of flame, their ships reduced to glowing ribs beneath the waterline. Even the statues melt, their faces sagging in the heat like wax figures confessing their fragility. You can feel the fire's hunger from miles away. The wind carries sparks that land on your skin and sting like hot sand. Smoke pours into the sky so thick that sailors far across the Aegean mistake it for a storm. In the streets below, Roman soldiers pick their way through the ruins. Their armour glows dull orange in the firelight, faces streaked with soot. They loot with the mechanical patience of men fulfilling a task, not indulging a vice. They tear gold from temple doors, pry gems from statues' eyes, roll amphorae of wine out of burning warehouses to drink in the open air. Occasionally one stops to stare at the destruction, silent, dazed, perhaps realizing that empire's triumph smells a lot like hell. Lucius Mummius, consul of Rome, stands before what was once the Temple of Apollo. Only the columns remain, blackened and cracked, still upright like the bones of a giant. He removes his helmet, wiping ash from his brow. "When they spoke of Greek fire," he murmurs, "I didn't think they meant this." An aide approaches with a sealed tablet. "The Senate will want a report," he says. "Tell them," Mummius answers quietly, that Corinth is no longer a city." His voice is calm, but there's a strange hesitation in it, a pause that sounds almost like regret. He orders the final purge, burn what remains. Nothing left to plunder, nothing left to mourn. The command spreads down the chain from centurions to soldiers to slaves. Torches are thrown into buildings still half standing. Oil is poured over marble altars. Arrows tipped with flame hiss into the roofs of surviving houses. The fire, already insatiable, rises again, fed now by obedience. From the northern hills the glow is visible all the way to Sicyon, where refugees watch in silence. Some fall to their knees, others weep. Even the Romans stationed on the outskirts pause, uneasy at the scale of the destruction. It's not a victory anymore, it's an erasure. As the sun sets, the flames reach their full height. They climb the columns of the Corinth like living creatures, wrapping the fortress in ribbons of light. The heat is so intense that it warps the air. Stones explode. Bronze flows like honey down the steps of temples. The smell is thick, choking, a blend of ash, blood, and something bitterly sweet, like incense over death. Amid the chaos, a single sound rises, the low moan of the wind through the ruins. It whistles through broken archways, sighs across the gutted marketplace, hums through the hollow shells of houses. It's as if the city itself is trying to speak, a voice made of smoke saying farewell. When the flames finally begin to die, there is nothing left that looks human. The statues are melted, the books are ash, the mosaics have turned to glass. The famous Corinthian bronze, once prized above gold, has fused into strange green puddles that glimmer in the moonlight. The next morning the Romans return to collect what remains. They step carefully, boots crunching on shards of pottery and bone. The air still trembles with heat. One soldier picks up a blackened coin and wipes it clean. The faint outline of a Pegasus still visible. "Even their gods can't fly anymore," he mutters. In the centre of the ruins, Mummius orders a column erected. Just one, plain and uncarved, to mark the site. No inscription, no dedication, just a single Roman eagle scratched into the stone. When asked what it means, he replies, "It means this place is now a lesson." That night, when the last embers fade and the city lies in darkness again, you can almost hear the sea beyond the walls, the waves whispering against the shore, carrying the smoke of Corinth into the open world. From Athens to Delphi, from Rhodes to Rome, travellers will see that smoke in the sky and know what it means. That Greece, once the teacher of the world, has been silenced. That beauty, for all its glory, cannot stand against order and steel, and yet the wind carries the ash of Corinth across the Aegean, scattering it over the islands, over the sea. The dust settles in every corner of the known world, as if refusing to vanish entirely. Even in ruin, the city finds a way to remain. The fires have burned themselves out. The ashes settled, blanketing everything in grey. Roofs, streets, corpses, even the sea beyond the harbours. Corinth no longer looks like a city. It looks like the ghost of one. Smoke still curls from the blackened shells of houses, and when the wind blows, it carries the faint crackle of collapsing walls. But for the first time in weeks, the only sound that truly fills the air is silence. Through that silence, a different rhythm begins, the shuffle of chains. The surviving people of Corinth, the last breath of 1,000 years of pride, are rounded up into columns. Men, women and children, nobles and beggars alike, their clothes torn, faces smeared with soot. Some clutch fragments of their old lives, a ring, a scrap of fabric, a small statue of a god. Others carry nothing at all. They move slowly, heads down, under the lash of Roman overseers. A centurion walks ahead, shouting orders in Latin. Separate them. Craftsmen to the left, the rest to the pens. The slaves of Corinth are being sorted. Those with skill, potters, sculptors, goldsmiths, scribes, are marked for transport to Rome. Their names are written in wax tablets. The rest, the unskilled, the unlucky, the too old or too young, are marched to the harbour to be sold on the spot. The Lyceum docks, once alive with the music of trade, now echo with the cries of the conquered. Wooden platforms rise above the pier, slick with blood and salt water. Roman scribes tally captives as they would livestock. 132 women, a clerk says, 70 boys, 24 craftsmen. He scratches notes with his stylus, bored. A woman, her wrists bound, tries to speak. "Please, my husband." But the soldier shoves her forward. She stumbles, vanishes into the crowd. The clerk doesn't even look up. Further down the quay, a group of philosophers, yes, philosophers, are dragged from the ruins of a burned villa. Their robes are scorched, their scrolls turned to ash. One, a grey-bearded man who once taught rhetoric in the Agora, stares at the horizon and whispers, "Rome will one day burn too." The guard laughs and strikes him with the flat of his sword. By midday, the auctions begin. Traders from across the Aegean flock to the harbour. Syrians, Egyptians, Italians, bidding on the spoils of war. A girl fetches 3 silver coins. A sculptor, 10. A young noblewoman, pale and silent, is sold for 20 denarii to a senator's agent. The buyers bargain in the language of empire, supply and demand. Above it all, the consul Lucius Mummius watches from the steps of the old customs house. He says nothing. His scribe records the totals. Property seized, slaves sold, treasures shipped. It's all neat columns and tidy numbers. History for Rome is always administrative. But there's one order Mummius gives personally. Every piece of art, he says, every statue, every mosaic, all to be sent to Rome. Within days, the great sculptures of Corinth, works by Lysippus, Polyclitus and Praxiteles, are loaded onto carts bound for the port. Marble gods wrapped in canvas, bronzes bound in rope, frescoes stripped from villa walls. The finest achievements of Greek civilization packed like cargo. A young officer asks, "Sir, should we guard the ships carefully?" Some say the sea gods are vengeful. Mummius almost smiles. "If anything happens to them," he replies, "make sure you replace them, even if it costs your life." He isn't joking. Far from the harbour, in the ruins of the Agora, a few survivors still hide. Among them, a boy no older than 12 crouches in the shadow of a fallen column. He clutches a small bronze Pegasus, a toy, the last remnant of a childhood erased overnight. He doesn't cry. The tears dried days ago. He just listens to the footsteps of soldiers, the shouts of auctioneers, and the dull, endless clink of coins changing hands. At dusk, when the last slave caravan departs for the north, the road out of Corinth looks like a river of misery. Thousands march in silence, bound together, their chains glinting in the red light of the setting sun. Dust rises behind them like smoke. A Roman standard-bearer walks at the head, carrying the eagle of the Republic. The wind tugs at its bronze wings, and for a moment it looks as though the bird itself is struggling to escape. When the columns vanish over the hills, only the dead remain, and the smell of the sea mixed with ash. In the Senate halls of Rome, the news of victory arrives weeks later. The senators nod approvingly. A few quote lines from Greek poetry to sound cultured, then vote to declare the province of Achaia established. And in the ruins of Corinth, where marble still smokes and the river still runs black, a single cat prowls through the ashes, stepping over coins, bones and broken amphorae. No one remembers her name, but she is the only free soul left in the city. When the smoke finally clears and the soldiers finish looting, Corinth becomes less a ruin than an inventory. The clatter of chains fades, replaced by the scribble of Roman styluses scratching across wax tablets, the voices of clerks reciting numbers, the creak of carts being loaded with art, gold and prisoners. The city's death is being itemized. At the centre of it all stands Lucius Mummius, consul of Rome, watching his men strip the last treasures from the ashes. He's no monster. He isn't laughing, isn't exulting. He simply does his duty, and that's what makes it worse. He views conquest as bookkeeping, destruction as an audit. By his order, every surviving artifact of Corinth is catalogued and sealed for transport. The process is so meticulous it feels almost sacred, as if Rome is holding a funeral for beauty. In a sense it is. The great bronze chariots of Helios, once blazing in the city's forum, are dismantled and packed into crates. The mosaics from the Temple of Poseidon, scenes of dolphins and sea gods in shimmering glass, are cut from the floor and rolled like carpets. Crates of gold coins, amphorae of perfume, carved ivories, all stamped with the red sigil of the Senate, SPQR. The Romans call it preservation. The Greeks call it theft. One officer, a younger man from Campania, pauses before a marble statue of Aphrodite that miraculously survived the flames. Her expression is serene, untouched, the curve of her mouth faintly smiling amid the ruin. "We should leave her," he murmurs. "Some things belong to the gods." Mummius doesn't look up from his ledger. "There are no gods here," he says flatly. "Only Roman property." The officer hesitates, then obeys. The statue is wrapped in linen and carried away. As the art departs, so too does the soul of the city. Dozens of ships fill the harbour, their decks piled high with plunder, marble torsos, bronze lamps, gilded shields, amphorae stacked like bones. The sea smells of tar and smoke. A slave galley groans under the weight of hundreds of chained captives bound for Italian markets. The cries of the oarsmen mix with the crash of waves. From the shore, Mummius watches the fleet prepare to sail. The smoke from Corinth's ruins still curls behind him like a ghost. His legate, Scipio Nasica, joins him. "You've done what few dared," he says. "You've erased the last voice of Greece." Mummius doesn't smile. "I didn't want to erase it," he replies quietly. "I wanted to silence it." They stand together a moment, looking out at the sea, two men on the edge of history. "Do you think the Greeks will ever forgive us?" Nasica asks. Mummius turns to him. "They'll thank us," he says, "when their children speak Latin. It's not cruelty, it's conviction. The Roman way is to believe that destruction can be a kind of mercy." Before the fleet departs, Mummius issues his final command. No fire is to be rekindled in Corinth. The order is symbolic, a declaration that this place, once the brightest flame of Greek pride, will remain dark. Then he mounts his horse and rides through what's left of the city. The streets are quiet now, save for the cawing of crows. Statues toppled by heat lie half buried in ash, their faces turned upward as if still pleading to the heavens. He passes the ruins of the Temple of Athena, where a column has cracked in two but still stands, defiant. For a moment even he feels something, a flicker of pity, or admiration, or maybe just exhaustion. He stops his horse beside the charred remains of the agora and dismounts. In the rubble, he picks up a small bronze figurine, a Pegasus, soot-blackened but intact. The same winged horse that once symbolized Corinth's freedom, now just another trinket. He turns it in his hand, then slips it into his pouch. By the time Mummius reaches Sixion, where his army encamps, the sun is setting over the gulf. The sky is red again, but this time the colour comes from light, not fire. He dictates his report to the Senate. The rebellion has been subdued. The city of Corinth is destroyed. The province of Achaia is secure. He adds nothing else. No poetry, no triumph, just facts. Weeks later, when the fleet reaches Ostia, the docks of Rome overflow with the spoils of victory. Senators and noblewomen gather to watch as crates are unloaded. Statues gleaming in the sun, bronzes burnished and golden once more. "Ah, Greek genius," they murmur admiringly, as if the art appeared from the sea itself rather than out of the ashes of a murdered city. The temple of Jupiter Capitolinus gains new columns, once Corinthian, now Roman. The Senate halls glitter with mosaics from Achaia. Even Mummius himself, reluctant collector, accepts the honours of a triumph. He rides through Rome in a chariot drawn by white horses, the treasures of Greece paraded behind him. The crowd cheers. No one mentions that he ordered it all destroyed. No one remembers the slaves who built his road to victory, or the fires that turned marble into dust. In time, the art of Corinth will adorn villas, temples, and gardens across Italy. It will become part of Rome's story, and the name of Mummius, the man who burned a city to give his people beauty, will fade into a footnote beneath the statues he stole. But if you stand very still in the ruins of the old city, when the wind shifts and the cicadas fall silent, you might still hear something faint, the echo of chisels, the whisper of brushes, the ghosts of artists who shaped perfection and watched it carried away. Rome took everything from Corinth except that sound, and even Rome cannot silence memory forever. The news spreads faster than the smoke fades. Across the Aegean, in the marble halls of Athens, in the crumbling theatres of Sparta, in the temples of Delphi and Olympia, word arrives that Corinth, proud, defiant Corinth, is gone. The once great mother of commerce and art, the eye of Greece, now nothing but ash under the eagle's shadow. And with that, the last breath of Greek independence exhales into history. Rome wastes no time. Within weeks of the city's destruction, the Senate issues its decree. The lands of the Achaean League shall henceforth be governed as a province of the Republic. Its name shall be Achaia. A scroll unrolled, a few signatures, and the idea of Greece, the Greece that once ruled the imagination of the world, ceases to exist. You can almost hear the dry scrape of the pen echoing across centuries of freedom. When the Roman administrator Sextus Julius Caesar, a distant relative of that other Caesar to come, arrives to take control, he finds a land both humbled and haunted. The smoke from Corinth still stains the western horizon, a constant reminder that beauty can burn as easily as any enemy. He rides past villages where farmers no longer speak of liberty but of taxes. Greek merchants now weigh their silver using Roman scales. The proud city-states that once debated philosophy and democracy now send reports to Roman governors, stamped with the seal SPQR. In Delphi, the oracle no longer speaks of fate but of bureaucracy. The world belongs to the Romans. Pay your tribute and live the Achaean League. That final dream of unity dissolves quietly. Its archives are seized, its symbols outlawed. The word league becomes dangerous, whispered only in wine-soaked corners by men who once believed in it. A few philosophers in Athens try to reason it into meaning. Perhaps it is not slavery, one argues in the Stoa. Perhaps it is cooperation. The crowd nods politely, eyes fixed on the Roman soldiers walking past the colonnade. Rome, ever pragmatic, doesn't gloat, it absorbs. It paves roads where battlefields once stood, builds baths where temples had burned, erects amphitheatres beside the ruins of old agoras. Greece becomes a museum of itself, curated by its conquerors. In Sparta, the last embers of warrior pride flicker weakly. Their kings are now guests of Rome, allowed to train in their old ways as a cultural curiosity. Let them pretend, one senator writes. It amuses the tourists. In Athens, the philosophers still teach, but now their students are Romans. Patrician sons sent east to learn rhetoric and taste civilization before returning home to rule it. The irony is exquisite. Greece has lost its freedom but gained immortality as Rome's teacher. Even Mummius, back in Rome, receives letters from Greek scholars thanking him for preserving their art. He doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. His triumph is complete. Not just the burning of Corinth, but the folding of an entire culture into the fabric of empire. From this point on, the word Greek no longer means free. It means refined. Rome will borrow its gods, its columns, its philosophy, its theatre, even its alphabet, polishing them until no one remembers who made them first. And in doing so, Greece will conquer Rome in silence, the way thought conquers steel. But that's still centuries away. For now, in 146 BCE, Greece is quiet. The roads hum with Latin orders. Legionnaires patrol the temples. The eagle standard flutters where once flew the banners of Athena and Apollo. Taxes are collected in grain, slaves in bodies, tribute in memory. In a dusty olive grove near Megara, an old farmer sits beneath a tree, looking toward the west where the ruins of Corinth still smoke faintly. He remembers his youth, when men spoke of liberty and philosophers debated virtue in marble halls. Now the only debates are about the price of oil and the weight of Roman taxes. He smiles without humour. They took our city, he says to no one, but not the sky. Above him the stars begin to appear, same as they did when Homer sang and Pericles dreamed. They shine over empires that come and go, indifferent but eternal. When the historian Polybius hears of Corinth's fall, he writes, Greece was brought under the dominion of Rome. She was not enslaved, but domesticated. It's a clever phrase, the kind that hides tragedy beneath style. Domesticated, as if Greece were a tamed lion, still proud in its bearing, but no longer wild enough to roar. And so, the Greek world slips into a new age. No longer the ruler, no longer the rebel, but the mirror in which Rome sees itself reflected. The poets of the next century will call it Hellas Romanized. The soldiers will call it Achaia. But the wind that moves through the olive trees will still call it what it has always been: home. Years pass, then decades, then centuries. The name Corinth becomes less a place than a whisper, a story told in the marketplaces of Rome, a cautionary tale about pride and punishment. Children in Italy learn that a city once dared to defy the Republic and was swept from the earth in a single season. Merchants tell the tale while selling Corinthian bronze, which now means not metal from Corinth, but metal like Corinth's, imitation replacing origin. The word survives, the city does not, but not everyone forgets. Travellers begin to visit the ruins, philosophers, poets, soldiers, even senators. They walk among the shattered columns, the heaps of marble burned smooth by fire, the silent mouths of temples open to the sky. They speak softly, as if afraid to disturb the ghosts. One Roman poet standing amid the rubble writes, "Here the gods slept in smoke, and beauty wept in silence." He carves the words into a broken column, and centuries later someone else will find them, moss growing in the grooves. You can imagine the sound of sandals crunching on the ash that never quite blew away. The whisper of wind through hollow streets where statues once stood. The Acra Corinth, the great fortress hill, remains, stripped of its temples, its walls blackened, but still watching the plains below with the weary gaze of an old soldier. At its summit, wild flowers begin to bloom among the stones. Nature, patient and indifferent, starts its quiet work of reclamation. Grassroots pry at marble, vines curl around toppled capitals, sparrows build nests inside the hollow eyes of broken gods. Life, as always, returns. From these ruins, Rome takes what it can use. Builders quarry the marble to pave roads and decorate villas. Artists study the fragments, copying their grace into new works. The very rubble of Corinth becomes part of the next world's beauty, its art reborn in the hands of those who destroyed it. In this way, Greece endures, not as empire or state, but as influence. Corinth's ashes become pigment, its columns become pattern, its philosophy becomes policy. Rome cannot help but imitate what it conquered. The marble ghosts of Greece haunt every Roman temple, every sculpted god, every philosopher who quotes Plato in Latin. Still, not all memory is imitation. Some comes as guilt. When Polybius, the Greek historian who once advised the Romans themselves, visits the ruins, he stands silent for a long time. Then he says, "They call this peace." But it is the peace of desolation he returns to his home in Megapolis, and his writings, smuggled through generations, will keep the truth alive, that the Republic did not civilize Greece. It only burned her so thoroughly that her light could never go out. Even Lucius Mummius, years after his triumph, begins to feel the echo of what he's done. In Rome, surrounded by statues and mosaics stripped from the city he erased, he walks through his own garden and feels haunted by the eyes of marble faces. One night, he orders the statues covered. "They watch too much," he mutters. The slaves obey, draping linen over art that was meant to be eternal. History will remember Mummius as practical, disciplined, a man who did his duty. It will not remember that sometimes at night he hears the sound of fire and thinks it's the sea, but time is a forgiving vandal. Centuries later, when the empire itself begins to crumble, new settlers will come to the site. They'll dig wells, plant vines, build huts from the old stones. The name Corinthos will return to maps. A small village will grow where once stood palaces. Fishermen will cast nets in the same harbours where Roman galleys once anchored, and their children will play among the ruins without knowing whose bones lie beneath their feet. Travellers will continue to visit, some out of reverence, some out of curiosity. They'll collect fragments, pottery shards, bits of mosaic, coins green with time. Each piece will tell the same story. that pride can fall, that fire can purify, and that memory never really dies. Even the wind over the isthmus seems to remember. It carries a faint note, like a sigh, the echo of lost voices, of a city that once believed it could stand forever. At night, when the moon rises over the darkened gulf, it glints off the broken marble and makes it shimmer like it did when the city still lived. If you listen closely, you might hear the faint hum of a lyre, the ring of hammers, the murmur of philosophers under starlight. You might think you smell smoke, not of destruction, but of sacrifice. The ruins of Corinth do not mourn, they remember. And in remembering, they speak, not of Rome's wrath, but of Greece's endurance. The empire that burned them will someday burn too. The marble of Corinth will outlast both. In the years after Corinth's fall, the Republic grows fat on its victory. To the senators in marble halls, the ashes of Greece are nothing more than proof that the gods favour Rome. See, they say, how swiftly we bring peace. But peace, in Latin, has many meanings. It can mean order, it can mean obedience, and sometimes it can mean silence so deep that even memory dares not speak. Corinth becomes a story told by Roman fathers to their sons, a parable about arrogance. Never provoke the Republic, they warn, even marble burns. The city's destruction becomes a lesson carved into the heart of empire, that mercy is optional, but obedience is absolute. Yet the irony runs deep. Rome will learn from Greece even as it punishes her. The conqueror becomes the pupil. The senators who applauded Corinth's ruin now fill their villas with Greek statues and hire Greek tutors for their children. They quote Homer at dinner, debate Aristotle in the baths, and design their temples in the Corinthian style. Delicate spirals of stone that mock the very city they erased. Greece, conquered by Rome, conquers Rome in spirit. The philosopher Polybius, living in exile under Roman patronage, writes his histories not to flatter the Republic, but to warn it. An empire, he says, that rules by fear will die by memory. His words pass quietly among scholars, but sink deep, like seeds that will bloom centuries later. Still, in 146 BCE and the decades that follow, Rome cannot imagine dying. The legions march across continents, the Senate rules from Spain to Syria, and everywhere the same story repeats. Defiance answered by annihilation, resistance by reconstruction. To Rome, this is justice, a balance of order restored. To the rest of the world, it is the echo of Corinth. When envoys from North Africa or the Levant come to plead their cases before the Senate, they pass by paintings of burning cities, of Roman heroes trampling kings, of captives in chains. One fresco, newly commissioned, shows the burning of Corinth itself, the Acrocorinth in flames, Greek women led away in chains, the eagle of Rome soaring above. Beneath it is an inscription, Decite obsequium, learn obedience. Rome wants the world to see and remember, and yet within that same empire poets begin to whisper. They see something hollow behind the triumph. We are inheritors of ashes, writes one. We eat the fruit of other men's gardens and call it conquest. His name will be forgotten, but his words will echo through history. Centuries later, philosophers in Rome will use Greek reasoning to question Roman power. They'll study the ruins of Corinth and ask whether empire can ever be righteous. They'll look at the statues of Apollo and Aphrodite adorning Roman temples and wonder aloud, who really conquered whom? Even Mummius, before his death, begins to understand the weight of the story he's written. He lives comfortably, honoured, his triumph immortalised in Rome's archives, but he refuses statues in his own likeness. When asked why, he replies simply, statues fall. He dies quietly in a villa decorated with the art he stole, the beauty of Corinth surrounding him in silence. Some say in his final days he spoke only one sentence again and again, I destroyed a city and it entered my house. That is Rome's lesson, one carved not in marble, but in conscience, that to build empire upon ashes is to invite the ghosts of those ashes to live with you. By the time the Republic collapses into empire, the story of Corinth has become ritual. New generals study it as a manual for discipline. When a city rebels, the Senate invokes Mummius. When a province hesitates, it invokes Corinth. Even Caesar, centuries later, while marching on Gaul, is said to remind his officers, "Leave them one field unburnt. We are not Mummius." He says it as a warning, not out of mercy. And yet, despite all the lessons Rome intended the world to learn, the truest one lingers unseen, that destruction spreads like faith. What begins in Corinth will end in Carthage, in Jerusalem, in Rome itself. For fire teaches only one truth. It always hungers for more. The empire forgets that. But the world remembers. Somewhere, in a dusty Greek school rebuilt from the ruins, a teacher recites Homer to a class of Roman-born children. They repeat the verses clumsily, their accents heavy. They speak of Achilles, of glory, of loss. The teacher smiles faintly. "Good," he says. "You're learning what we forgot, that victory is never the end of the story." And as those children grow to rule the empire their fathers built, the ghosts of Corinth follow them, in the marble beneath their feet, in the words they speak, in the art that fills their homes. Rome thinks it has conquered Greece, but Greece, patient as marble, is conquering Rome from within. The ashes of Corinth scattered across the empire have become seeds, and in those seeds, the old world lives again. Night falls softly over the isthmus. The air cools, the last smoke fades, and the ruins of Corinth glow pale beneath the moon. Not in fire now, but in quiet silver. The sea sighs against the empty harbours. Somewhere far below, a wave breaks on the stones, and the sound rolls through the hollow streets like a heartbeat returning to a long-dead body. You walk among what remains. The marble still holds warmth from the sun, but the heat is gentler now, like memory instead of flame. Each step stirs dust that glitters faintly in the moonlight, the dust of temples, of statues, of people who once believed their city could never fall. It rises and swirls, almost like breath, as if the place itself still exhales. The Corinth watches, as it always has. The wind hums through its broken gates, whispering to no one and to everyone, "Remember." Somewhere a night bird cries, and for a moment the sound might be a voice, the echo of a sculptor, a soldier, a mother calling to her child. Their stories are all gone, yet the air feels full of them. You stand still and it's as though the centuries dissolve. The fires burn again, the streets fill with music, the markets buzz, the temples gleam, then fade like breath on glass. The wind shifts, the ash dances, rises, then settles again. The sea keeps whispering, the stars keep looking down. The world moves on. Rome will rise higher than this, and Rome will fall too. Others will come, Byzantines, Franks, Ottomans, each leaving their own layers of ruin, their own lessons for the wind to carry. But Corinth, the city that burned and would not vanish, will always remain beneath it all. Its dust mingled with every empire's dust, its story written into the bones of the earth. If you listen, truly listen, you can almost hear the rhythm of time breathing through the stones. It says what every ruin says in the end, that pride fades, that empires crumble, but that beauty, even broken, even buried, endures. The moon climbs higher, the ruins soften into shadow, the night smells of salt and jasmine and something faintly metallic, not blood anymore, but memory. You breathe in, slow, steady. The dust of Corinth settles on your skin, cool and light, as if the city is blessing you, or warning you, or both. The wind moves through the columns and makes a low soothing tone, the last lullaby of a world that refused to be forgotten. So rest now, traveller, the fires are gone. The conquerors are dust. The sea still hums against the shore, and somewhere deep beneath your feet the stones of Corinth dream, not of wrath or ruin, but of peace. The ruins of Corinth rest quiet now beneath the moon, their edges softened by time and dust. What once blazed with marble and fire has become something smaller, humbler, a hush where even the stones seem to breathe. The sea still sighs beyond the walls, the same rhythm it kept when the city was alive. You can almost hear it calling through the broken columns, washing the centuries clean. The night carries no screams now, only wind, soft, steady, smelling faintly of salt and wild thyme. The stars shimmer above the Corinth like tiny watchfires guarding what's left. You stand there, and for a heartbeat the silence feels heavy, not empty, as though the city itself still listens. You think of all that's come and gone, empires that rose, burned, and turned to dust. Corinth's ashes drifted across the world, settled in Rome's marble, in Greece's soil, in the memory of anyone who ever loved something too proud to last. And somehow, that feels comforting. Nothing really ends. It just changes shape. The breeze moves again, lifting a swirl of pale dust around your feet. It glows silver under the moon, like the ghost of a forgotten song. Somewhere a wave breaks, long and low. The air cools against your skin. If you close your eyes, you can almost imagine the city whole again. Voices in the marketplace, lyres in the courtyards, laughter echoing between white walls. Then it fades, slow and kind, leaving only peace. The night deepens. The wind hums through the stones, soft as a lullaby. Sleep well, traveller. The fires are out, the dust has settled, and Corinth at last is quiet. Good night, sweet dreams.